Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the 2-hour chart of silver provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. Now, there are a number of lines here. The first one, this blue line, is the primary recent trend line going back to March of this year. This other trend line coming down actually comes from the higher prices. You can see it's at a sharper slope. They both intersect at this blue arrow, and we did have a rally on not a lot of news. So the way that news and fundamentals and technicals work is that a move on little news is much more important than a move on news. So you can see we're reaching that key point that I pointed out for a while. It's that $20.50 price. That's a very, very important price. One, because it intersects with a very long-term trend line, which I don't have drawn here. But the other one is that it has this resistance point right here. So we're sitting right at that point, and it could definitely go one way or the other. The other lines here is this primary uptrend. You can see we're about 3/4 of the way through the channel. If we do get through that channel, or at least to the top of that channel, we're going to get up to that 21.50 price, or 21.25. That's another important technical point. So let's pull out a little bit here so you can see the significance of this line. The blue line has many touch points. We're sitting right at that blue line. If we pull out to the 8-hour, there's not a lot there, so we need to pull out to the daily, and that's where we get this very, very large trend line that we're nowhere near. We still need to get to 26 just to come back up to that trend. Now let's throw in the MACD. It's very important on the weekly because we have finally crossed with some conviction. You can see that the daily MACD is about to cross over that zero line from negative territory. That's going to be the first time pretty much this year that we're going to have that cross. And of course, the most important cross of all is going to be this cross of the weekly MACD, indicating some type of bottom being put in. You can see that the bottom seems to correspond with the old tops all the way back to the Bear Stearns top. Now, if we zoom in a lot closer, we can see that we do have that cross. We have that cross right here. In the past, that type of cross, if we use 2008 as an example, was the beginning of a very long uptrend and then an explosive trend. The cross that we had in 2012 or so, that was just a brief spike rally, but you can see that the rally actually took us from about 26 all the way to 37.50. So a rally like that would take us above $30. So let's jump over and take some questions, and then we'll look at the main topic of the night. So the first question is from Werner, and this is future with fusion energy. And he asks, hello, Brother John F. Firstly, thank you for all your time and effort to inform us about the importance of silver and of the role of silver in the monetary system. Yesterday I heard an interview on SGT report about increasing energy that is needed to mine silver and gold and therefore increase of costs. At first glance, this seems very basic, but as I was listening, I thought of a possible scenario that might have a disadvantage result on the price of silver. Next to all financial manipulation surrounding silver and gold, there's a cause, the fact that the increase of technology and the use of cheap energy, namely oil, has a negative impact on silver and gold. The globalists use these advancers to suppress the price inflation of silver and gold and make the fiat currency look more attractive. This is of cause also relevant to price inflation in total. With the development of nuclear fusion as a possible energy source, energy will become very cheaper. Okay, it is somewhat in the future, about another 40 to 50 years, but would seem to me that is in the globalists' interest to accelerate this development to ensure that they can continue with their Ponzi scheme. What is your opinion on this matter? Well, I think that the cause of nuclear power had a tremendous setback with the Fukushima reactor. We can see that it's nowhere near solved, and it's still a disaster. We had the Russian Chernobyl accident before that. So I don't think the public is too positive on this type of energy. I really don't know the validity of fusion or cold fusion. I certainly haven't seen any implementation of that, so I'm not going to pass judgment on that. But when you're talking about the mining of silver and gold, you're talking about things like heavy equipment machinery. I have not seen any indication that there is electric technology that can power the type of motors and machines that are required to do mining. So if we're talking 40 and 50 years out in the future, then I think that is going to be irrelevant to the short-term price and maybe the longer term. But again, I have very serious doubts about the ability to replace liquid fuels. Liquid fuels are by far the most efficient for moving large amounts of weight with a small amount of energy. I don't see anything replacing that anytime soon, so I don't see an impact on mining. And industrial uses. This is from Leviathan. Hello, Brother John. I'm in Paris and would like to ask you a special video about industrial uses of silver, compare the production and recycling silver in the world, because I think it will be a powerful reason for the prices go up for our metal. Thank you very much for your work. So I'm going to use that to segue into the main story that I'm going to do here on the investment in silver, just from wasted money that people spend. But I want to start off with the Silver Institute. These are the best figures that we have. I don't know how accurate these figures are, but these are the figures that we have. So the one I want to look at in regards to that question has to do with the recycling. Now, that comes in the supply. And you can see that the old silver scrap has stayed steady, but has spiked up in the last 2 years to about 250 million ounces. That's how you get the billion ounces. A lot of people cite the number of 1 billion ounces. We mine 1 billion ounces a year. We don't mine 1 billion ounces a year. We really only mine about 750 million ounces. You can see for the last 3 years, about 750. We had a spike to 787 in 2012. Now, with the tremendous drop in price in silver, I actually expect this number to fall from where it is, just because the costs have stayed the same or risen, but the price of silver has dropped dramatically. We're already seeing a lot of mines being shuttered and a lot of things going on in relation to that. So that's the amount of money, that's the amount of silver they're pulling out of the ground. Now, this recycling figure, that's old silver scrap. Now, that's a very important figure. I've talked about it in the past, and if you go down to your LCS, your local coin shop, and talk to the proprietor there, you'll find out that for the longest time, the way they do business is that they buy up junk silver, they buy up junk jewelry. They quote against spot, and they quote a price a little bit lower than spot, because what they do primarily with their silver is send it back to be refined into bars to be sold on the COMEX or LBMA, etc. Now, I believe that that scenario is going to begin to change. One of the reasons I believe that is because of the premium we have on junk silver. It's still around $2 to $3 an ounce above spot. So if you're talking about recycling the junk, and I don't know what percentage the silver jewelry is as opposed to the junk. You can see that jewelry still is about almost 200 million ounces. That's still more than the coins, but we don't know how much jewelry is being manufactured versus how much jewelry is being recycled. So as far as the coins being recycled, I expect this number to drop dramatically, simply because with the premium above spot for junk silver, it's not going to be in the interest of the local coin shops to take that and sell it for spot or below spot when they can get $2 or $3, whether that's on eBay or whether that's just sending it into APMEX. I think the buy price on APMEX the last time I checked was $1.50 above spot. So I don't see any reason why the local coin shops are going to send that silver into the manufacturers to be melted down, or I'm sorry, into the refiners to be melted down for the manufacturers, when they could get nearly $2 more by just simply bagging it up and selling it off as junk silver. So I think this number is going to drop dramatically, and possibly this number is going to drop dramatically as well, and that's going to have a big impact. So I wanted to look at the things that Americans spend their money on. Now, I've done comparisons in the past about 401k investments, stock investments, bond investments, retirement accounts, pension funds, and things like that. But what I want to look at now is just the amount of money that is thrown away or wasted or spent on frivolous things. So let's first look at the amount of money that's spent on coins and metals. So you can see here that the number for 2011 was 118 million ounces, less than 100 in 2012. Now, I can't vouch for the accuracy of this. I know that the Silver Eagle program is going to set a record this year. It was very high last year, and certainly it's at least 50% of this number. I don't have all the total mintage figures from Perth, from Canada, from the Britannia series, from the Philharmonics. I don't know what that total is, but we know that if these are accurate, then the amount of money that we're talking about that's going into coins and metals, physical silver investment, is only around 100 million ounces. Now, 100 million ounces at current prices, we'll just say that that's roughly $2 billion. So only $2 billion a year is invested in physical silver, and again, that's worldwide. Now, I'm just going to pull up and look at the money wasting habits of Americans. And we know that America's share of world GDP is shrinking. We know that America's share of world wealth is shrinking. But even if we just look at the American share, we can see how these figures dwarf what we're talking about with what it would take to buy physical silver. So here's 13 ways Americans throw away money. And the first one here, there's $6 billion in unused gift cards each year. Now remember, $2 billion was the total amount spent on physical silver in 2012. This is 3 times that figure, and it just gets worse. $7 billion in ATM fees, $12 billion in traffic tickets, $29 billion is spent on candy. So if you can imagine, if just 10% of the money that is spent on candy was saved and spent on physical silver, that's $3 billion. That would more than double the percentage of investment silver that is stacked each year for physical silver. $31 billion in lottery tickets. How many times have you been in line at the store and been behind somebody who's buying scads of lottery tickets? Of course, they virtually never pay off, and the government takes a huge percentage of the money, then they tax the money, so it's just a big racket. $44 billion spent on tobacco. So if Americans, and this is just Americans, this is not worldwide, if just Americans took 5% of the money that they spend on tobacco each year and invested that in physical silver, we're talking about a doubling of physical silver investment. Again, same thing with alcohol, $50 billion, $50 billion on credit card interest, $70 billion is spent gambling at casinos. That number is staggering. If even 1% of that were spent on physical silver, you're talking about a serious impact on the silver market. $76 billion spent on soda, pop. That's a sugary, worthless drink that destroys your pancreas, and it's just a tremendous waste. But that's the amount of money that Americans spend. $146 billion on wasted energy. We've already talked about energy. $165 billion in wasted food. And so you can see, looking at those, if you just took 1% of each one of those, that would have a huge impact on the physical silver market. So we know that we definitely know that Americans are completely ignorant about the value of physical silver. They're not only throwing their money away by giving it to Wall Street banksters and crooks, putting it in 401ks and pension plans so that Wall Street can steal it, but they're also, just their throwaway money is enough that if they realize the truth about the situation of physical silver, they could make a permanent change in the silver market. So back to the chart, we're at that turning point. Now, I don't know if this is a permanent turning point. I suspect that it is, with the crossing of the weekly MACD, that this is going to be the bottom. We'll have a definite confirmation if we get a cross through of the upper trend channel line here. We're looking for that resistance line that's sitting right at about 20.50 to 20.70. That's going to be the point where we get a confirmation in this trend change. The other big resistance line is going to be this 2150 line. This is marked by the drop off from the recent June smackdown, but it also coincides with a falling trend line. So 2150 is also a very important point. If we can rally through 2050, 2060 and get through 2150, that will be much more confirmation that the bottom is actually in place. We're going to watch that very closely, and we'll talk to you next time.